Hello, and welcome to episode 21, the Independence Edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat, the podcast that covers the arts in northern Chautauqua County, sponsored by the 1891 Fredonia Opera House. My name is Tom Laughlin, and I'm your host as we bring you news and information about arts events at the Opera House and around the region, including interviews with artists and creators across the county. This 21st and final edition of Season 1 of the podcast falls shortly after Independence Day, and so it seems fitting to celebrate the ideas of independence and freedom. Freedom and independence are valued human rights, not to be taken lightly. Yet, ironically, neither comes free. As with so many things in life, freedom and independence are balanced with responsibility and obligation. Neither exists without the other. The loud clamorings we hear today about freedom and autonomy never seem to be accompanied with equivalent clamorings about responsibility and obligation. Perhaps one day we will celebrate Responsibility Day as joyfully as we celebrate Independence Day. In the meantime, with summer bringing freedom to students, educators, and all of us here at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House, we hope you get the opportunity to enjoy some freedom from the many stresses we all face today. Were it not for the fact that Camille Pissarro was an independent thinker and painter not tied to his era's conventions, we probably never would have seen the French Impressionists evolve into a major art movement. The Art and Architecture series will be presenting Pissarro, Father of Impressionism, on Saturday, July 16th at 1 p.m. Once again, I was fortunate enough to convince Distinguished Professor of Art Alberto Rey, who is himself now a little bit freer, to come on the podcast and discuss the life and work of Pissarro. Distinguished Professor Alberto Rey, once again, welcome to the podcast. Always great to have you.
Oh, it's always fun, Tom. It's always fun.
And I guess at the next time we talk to each other, I'm going to have to call you Distinguished Professor Emeritus. You've announced your retirement from the faculty at SUNY Fredonia, and I want to be the first to offer my congratulations to you.
Thank you. It feels much better than I expected. And I'm looking forward to spending more time doing my artwork and doing some guiding and some writing.
Well, I've known you for quite some time, and I know that there you will probably be able to fill every single minute that you have now with more and more creative stuff. So I'm looking forward to what you produce in retirement. Congratulations. I
Thank
just,
you.
it's hard for me to even call it a retirement when you're concerned.
It's I'm still waiting for it to kind of soak in. I mean, I've been so busy that I think I'll feel it in September when I don't have to go back.
Yeah, that'll be great. And I know because it was pretty difficult just to get you to do this particular discussion of the art and architecture series, Pizarro, Father of Impressionism, which is coming up on July 16th over at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House. So I've got you scheduled, and I'd better not take up too much of your time here. So let's get going.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Camille Pissarro has turned out to be, in my looking at the situation, quite an interesting character, particularly his origin story, where he came from, and so on. And what do you know about that?
Well, I was surprised, and I always look at artists and what they've done in their lives and how it's been what has influenced them, what made them who they are, what made them choose what they decided to paint. And oftentimes it has to do with where they came from and how they grew up. And for me, when I heard that he was born in the West Indies, which is now the US Virgin Islands and St. Thomas, it kind of answered some questions. It's kind of a sense of rebellion to him. He grew up, he went to primary school with, residents who were mostly, of African descent. And I think that influenced him. His father was Jewish, ran a hardware store. And later on in life, when he was 12, he was sent to France to boarding school. And I think that's where he became enamored with French artists. And then later on, when he was 17, he went back to St. Thomas and studied as a clerk and started to do painting then. And he found another artist that became friends. And then they decided at the age of 21 that they were going to go to Venezuela and just paint, not do anything else, just paint for both of them. And they spent 2 years there and made just a multitude of work on Venezuela and the people there. And then I think he just realized that to move forward with his career, that he had to move to Paris, which was the center of the art world at the time.
So he's that's a very interesting. He traveled an awful lot around, and finally he landed himself in Paris. And he's called, interestingly enough, the father of Impressionism. And I had never really heard of that term attached to anybody at all, because I'm in love with the Impressionists myself personally. And Pissarro's name does not come up in the same breath as you talk about, Cezanne, Gauguin, Van Gogh, all the very famous Impressionists. So he came to Paris at a time when a lot of the younger artists who were to become Impressionists were around. And how did he blend in with all of those people? How did they discover each other?
Well, it was interesting because he was one of the older kind of figureheads of that movement. And it wasn't like he just studied art. He was actually tutored and worked under Corot, Courbet, Millet. I mean, these were the top guns. I mean, these were the top hitters, the best artists, the most successful artists of the period, most respected. And one of the things I think he was deeply influenced was that a lot of these painters painted everyday people. It wasn't the aristocracy that they were concentrating on. It was just everyday people in everyday situations and a love for rural scenes, the working class. And I think that stuck with him. And over time, I think he brought these artists together. I think they were like 15 artists. And, those included Cezanne, Van Gogh, Monet, Gauguin, Mary Cassatt. And one of the things I just finished reading a book on the letters that Van Gogh wrote Theo, his brother, who pretty much supported him most of his life. And Van Gogh had a lot of issues, a lot of neurological and personal issues that affected his work. But every once in a while, he would talk about these artists. He would talk about Pissarro fondly, and he had a love-hate relationship with Gauguin, who lived with them, and they almost killed each other. And he chopped off part of his ear doing that stay. But the beautiful thing about these letters, and I think this is what this exhibition is that is going to be presented at the Opera House, is through these letters, you get to understand art history. You get to understand the relationship between these artists and the struggles they had and how they leaned on each other. And in the letters of Van Gogh, he would, whenever he had any money, he would buy prints of other artists so he could study it. This is before TV and email and any other kind of, and going to museums was really difficult. So buying prints was the way that artists would admire other artists and study their work. And so, you hear about how much he liked certain artists, many of whom, that Pissarro brought together as a group, and they kind of fed off each other, and they painted together. Pissarro painted with Gauguin and Cezanne and Mary Cassatt. So it's really it had to be such a rich period. And the other thing, they were all suffering, because Impressionism, when it started, wasn't very popular. Everything at the time was started, outside, and then it was brought into the studios to be polished off so that it looked really finished. And Impressionism was very different in that the idea was that you were painting the impression, the feeling of being outside, that it was important to capture that mood, the essence of the moment, and that there was something emotionally significant that happened when you left something unfinished, or when you painted almost a little bit too quickly, so that the personality of the view of came through the work. And although it was realistic, there was some interpretation by the artist that left, again, the essence of the scene, and not necessarily every detail. Now, one of the things that these other artists did, and it was popular at the time, is that nature was idealized. And one of the things that Pissarro did was he showed nature in all its imperfections. And that was not popular. The idea was that you had to create this ideal world that nature represented. And he kind of felt that, it's not ideal, that there are imperfections in nature. And that he thought was really the truth, or the essence of the scene.
Well, apparently he had a difficult relationship with the Paris Salon, which was the official body in Paris at the time that dictated artistic taste, particularly for the aristocracy. And I think all of the Impressionists had that problem. It was almost like there was a level of painting that was, traditional, and, like you say, very finished in the studio. And then all these other artists were out there doing this work, and the two schools pretty much went head to head. They didn't like each other very much.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the other things he had going against him was that he wasn't from France, that he was from the West Indies. So they didn't want to promote him as much. And, back then, if you didn't have a show in a salon, that was the pinnacle of professional achievement. So if you made it to the salon, then, you could promote that and be well known. Luckily for him, he was promoted by Emile Zola, which was a very respected art critic and writer. And even when his works were exhibited, when you say salon style, you're talking about paintings stacked on top of each other all the way up to the ceiling. And when he had his work shown, it was shown almost at the top, like right next to the ceiling, where very few people could really get a chance to look at it.
Right.
But Emile Zola still, championed his efforts. So that helped him a great deal. And I think they started to create this, was it a Gallery Refusée, where the works of artists who weren't exhibited in the salon started to have their own exhibitions. And then that became kind of confrontational, but also became popular as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. When we talk about his style, Pizarro style, he actually every time, one of the fascinating things about him, was it seems like he had the ability to continually reinvent himself in terms of style. He started out with impressionism and followed that school, and then he took a couple of journeys away from it and then came back.
Mhm.
An amazing guy in terms of looking at how he went through his actual artwork, what he went through.
Yeah, most of the time, artists who do that have some financial backing, that um, they have a little cushion, a little safety net, so that if things don't go well, they can, get some money from, um, their the money that was left by their parents or whatever the case may be, inheritance. But that wasn't the case with him. So um, his work evolved as he met these other artists, and as again they learned from each other, and the work just kept evolving, becoming more and more uh, kind of pushing the edges of realism. Um, and I think what happens as your work changes, you also have the danger of losing supporters. So you have collectors who you kind of nurture, and over time they like your work, and then they come on board, and then you change your work again, and then it takes a while for either to build those collectors up again, or you might not get them again. So when he went from impressionism to pointillism, which is a pretty big departure, I mean, it's still, it's not super realistic, but it's a big change, and it's kind of derived from kind of scientifically breaking down color, and complementary colors, and how to work with small brushwork to give an impression of a landscape in its super saturated environment. He lost a lot of collectors when he did that, and a lot
Hmm.
of support. And then he did it for a number, like 4 years. I think he was 50 when he did this. And then when he was 54, 55, he decided that it was too confining, that he wanted more freedom to investigate nature the way he wanted. And then he went back to Impressionism. But when he went back to Impressionism, he brought with him what he had learned from Pointillism. So the work changed, and it was much more free, but he felt, he was able to bring both of his works together. But again, at any time you make those drastic changes, you lose support along the way, and it takes people a while to get back on board.
Yeah, and that's amazing for a guy like him, because I mean, when you look at his own personal life, he never really, what's the word I'm looking for? He never really made a lot of money, it seems, and yet he had
No,
a huge family to support.
yeah, yeah. He had 7 kids, 6 became artists, and I think it was nice that he ended up painting with most of them. But I mean, that's a lot of pressure. And I think, one of the things, he also not only lived in Paris, but he lived in London. And during the Franco-Prussian War, he left Paris just for safety. And he left behind 1,500 paintings that he had created over 20 years. And when he came back, only 40 survived. The rest were trampled and destroyed by the soldiers from the war. So, I mean, that had to be crushing, and having to start over with, your inventory of work that you were trying to support your family. So, and then later in life, he, after, again, pointillism, and he went back to impressionism, he started to get like a condition where his eyes became infected from being outside. So he spent the last years of his life painting from inside hotel rooms. He would paint inside a hotel looking out the window, and that's how he did his paintings later on in life.
Yeah, yeah. He's an amazing story. Let's talk just a little bit too about his title, the father of Impressionism. He seemed to have a personality that had within it the ability to keep all of these various personalities, all of these other artists like Monet, Cézanne, Gauguin, all of them together in a way that that whole movement never ended up really with everybody sort of fighting each other and calling each other names. It was
Mhm.
always, he seemed to be the center around which all of these people revolved, and they all loved him.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. I think, even Gauguin, who I think might have been between him and the Van Gogh, might have been the most volatile. Gauguin, with his ego and everything, said that he was a student of Pissarro. I mean, to say that, you're giving up your identity and connecting it humbly to another person, I find very interesting. And of all those artists that we talked about, we're talking about, Cezanne, Gauguin, Van Gogh, Mary Cassatt, um, all of them.
Monet, all of them.
Yeah, Monet, all of them. Even, I mean, I think Seurat and Signac were a little disappointed that he left,
Right.
but they all, saw him as a father figure that supported them during very difficult times and gave them support for their artwork and what they were doing. And I think that was, you know, very appreciated by, when you're looking at artists who don't know if they're doing the right thing and everybody else is saying to them that, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" And here you have this older person who's been around for a while and has worked with these respected artists who are telling you, yes, continue to do what you're doing. Um, I think that's really, really important.
It is. I think so too. And I'm going to share with you one final kind of, you know, sorry, this is not a pun, but what fun final impression I got from looking at some of his work. He apparently did a series of paintings from the Boulevard Montmartre in Paris. And I don't know how many of them are in this series, but I saw about 6 of them. And each one of them is just so radically different from the other in terms of perspective, in terms of light, in terms of color. One of them is a night scene. I just love the way he was able to take this one particular view of this boulevard and be able to render several different paintings, giving it a different look each time, a different impression, shall we say.
Hmm. And these are complicated compositions. It's not a very simple. You have a lot of architectural detail. Some of them have as though the road is wet. You have reflections. But the thing is, the way these are painted, you can almost hear the click clack of the horses and the commotion and people talking. It has that kind of unfinishedness that it lets you participate in bringing yourself and your own interpretation into the work. And the colors are super rich. Um, so I think it's really really rich. These are really rich. And now, of course, I don't think these were probably done in a sitting, in one sitting, but it wouldn't surprise me if he came back, still finished it outside, but probably came back later on in a couple days, which was also possible
Sure.
during that time.
Sure, but they are a lot of fun, and I know that the film is. I've looked at the trailer for the film, I believe, and it sure looks like people are going to get from the cameras closing in. They're really going to be able to get a solid look at some of the richness of the color and the composition and all of those kinds of things. And the thing that I think people will come away with if they go to see this film will be the sense of everyday life in Paris at the time, because all of the figures are everyday common people. All of the figures are street scenes. All of the figures are rural landscapes. There's nothing in it except the everyday life, and having it painted this way, I think is going to be a phenomenal experience.
Well, one of the things about these Boulevard series, these were done in the late 1830s or 1880s, and this is the time that he left pointillism and went back to impressionism. So you can see both. I mean, you can see the brushwork, the small brushwork. You can see the looseness of the brushwork, attention to detail, but loosely put in. But you still see the connection to pointillism that he didn't have before, and it changes. I think the way he does his work for the better. After he came back from that.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, Alberto, as always, thanks again for coming on. What have you got coming up for yourself, that we can talk about just a little bit?
So yeah, I'm going to be doing some art reviews for Buffalo Spree. So we're going to be writing a review now for the exhibition that's happening at the Castellani Museum of contemporary Ukrainian art from the war that's happening there. It's very contemporary. It's happening within the past year. I'm working on 2 museum exhibitions, one at the Southern Vermont Arts Center, which is going to be next April 2023. So I got to do about 9 6-foot paintings for that, plus a bunch of watercolor and sketches. That's in Manchester, Vermont. And then I'm doing the same month, I'm doing a museum exhibition at the Castellani, which will be on the Niagara River. And that'll also be 9 large 6-foot paintings with video and sound recordings. So some other projects in the summer. I think we're working on a book. But so a little busy.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing you're retired now, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm surprised I could do this when I had a job.
Really? Well, again, thank you for your time. It's always appreciated, and I'm sure once the 2022-23 architecture series, art and architecture series comes out, we'll be having you back again on the podcast. So thanks once again, and good luck to you in retirement.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's always a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Pissarro, the father of Impressionism, is an exhibition on-screen presentation that features the recent exhibition of Pissarro's work at the Ashmolean Museum in London. This is a visually stunning 90-minute documentary that offers the opportunity to see Pissarro's work in high-definition HD color. The 1891 Fredonia Opera House will screen this documentary on Saturday, July 16th at 1 p.m. Tickets are $15, $10 for students, and can be obtained by calling the box office at 716-679-1891 or at the door the afternoon of the screening.
Explore
Independent films are becoming more and more popular, and the 1891 Fredonia Opera House's cinema series is always your opportunity to see films made by smaller, independent filmmakers and producers. There are 4 cinema series films coming in the month of July, but we were unable to confirm the 3rd and 4th titles in this series before we spoke to our favorite movie expert, Mr. Paul Preston of the Movie Guys. So I hope you'll settle for our discussion of the first 2 movies in the series, Downton Abbey and The Phantom of the Open. You'll be on your own for the other 2. And with me now, live and direct from the studio at the Movie Guys, it is the movie guy himself, Paul Preston. Paul, how are you?
Well, the home studio. What do you want me to have a budget? Not so much, Tom.
Not so much. Well, I know that you can make any place you go into a studio of your own. You've got so much equipment out there, so it's pretty worth it.
That's true. That money has to go into movie tickets. So
that's right. Yeah,
and it's summer, so there's much to see. So yeah,
this is
this
is your busy time. So even getting you for 20 minutes or so is probably very difficult. But we'll talk about that.
Sadly, it's the time when the movies are worst. But you've picked a couple of good ones today. The majority of summer movies, usually throughout history, they're pretty bad. But these are some good ones, and they get back to me during Oscar season. We'll have some real fun.
Oh yeah, that's December. We'll go. We'll have one of these days. Maybe I ought to get your Oscar rant recorded. That would be fun.
Oh yes, I never have a shortage of things to say about every category.
All right, well, let's talk about what's coming up at the Opera House for our local people here. And the first one we've got in the upcoming cinema series is Downton Abbey: A New Era. And I have to admit, right off the top of my head, that Downton Abbey is not a series I've ever seen an episode of. I don't know all of the characters. There seem to be a million of them. The plots thicken everywhere. It was my impression of it, but I'll start us off by letting you give your impression of what you saw.
Well, Julian Fellows is the creator of Downton Abbey. He's got a thing. He won an Oscar for his first feature film, which is a pretty amazing feat. He wrote a couple of shorts, maybe some TV, and then the first feature was Gosford Park, and it won the Oscar for him for Best Original Script. So why jump out of your comfort zone? He wrote all 52 episodes of the Downton Abbey television show and continued with the script for the first Downton Abbey feature and now for the sequel. He gets class dynamics. He gets demeanor and behavior in turn of the 20th century families and society. And so he offers them up again here in another sort of classic way where he just doesn't seem to make mistakes about how people behave in an authentic representation of that era. Now, one of the interesting things about late Downton Abbey on TV was how cognizant the characters seemed to be about how time might pass them by. That their way of living was on the verge of extinction. The upstairs, downstairs, Victorian era style, left over from the Gilded Age of the 1890s. Right out of Fredonia, I worked at the Astor's Beechwood Mansion. There were many Fredonia alum went there when we were doing living history and tours of the 1890s. And the Crawleys and the Granthams, who occupied Downton Abbey, seem to still have that going well into the 1920s. And so it was interesting how they kind of were talking about, are we done here with this way of living? As aristocrats started getting bankrupted by the end of the television show, which ended in the year 1926. But lots of stuff went on. If you're sitting there going, this is a PBS show, this is Masterpiece Theater, I don't care. No, there was World War I, there was disease, there were affairs, there were all sorts of fun stuff that made Downton Abbey a real exciting show without being soapy about it all. And so, no surprise, Downton Abbey after the 1926 and that first film picked up in 27. Downton Abbey: A New Era starts in 1928. So there are a lot of characters, and there is a lot to catch up on. And me just telling you this, they don't do a lot to catch you up.
Okay, they expect you to walk in having some foundation.
Yeah, if you never saw Top Gun, you can go into Top Gun Maverick. They cover a lot at the top about Maverick's guilt over his old friend's death, and the other things is, how he butts heads with his higher ups and some other stuff. You can kind of get it all and enjoy that film. But there's a lot 52 episodes, to sort of catch up on. So if you're a fan of Downton Abbey, though, you won't be disappointed. Now, much like the king and the queen visited Downton in the first film, there's a big event that happens in the mansion of the new film. Tom,
What?
one of your favorite things. Now, the late 1920s, what was going on in the world? Movies. So,
movies, and they were just going from silent to talkies in 1929.
Correct. Yeah. There's a little parallel to Singing in the Rain, and that the whole transition doesn't sit well in all the film stars who've made it into silent movies. But yes, a film crew comes to Downton Abbey because they want to shoot on location, which is also a new thing. You can now shoot in the place where your movie takes place. So there's another plot as ever. There's not just one plot going on with the movie. The Dowager Countess of Grantham, the matriarch character played by Maggie Smith, she's inherited this French villa. She's in her 80s. So who's leaving her a place? Well, in the south of France, no less. So some of the family members travel down there to learn it was an old flame, and that unveils potential family secrets and must be dealt with as well. So multiple storylines are afoot to keep it interesting. Now, Julian Fellowes, who I mentioned, gives no shortage of plot and dialogue. The characters are constantly chirping on about what to do, but there's a clip to the pace of the film. It doesn't quite let it breathe as well as the television episodes did. Maybe this could be 2 or 3 TV episodes and you might take a breath, but they don't. There's a lot to get to, and they just get to it. So, you won't be bored, but you might go, oh, I wish we could slow down for a second. But regardless, if you love these characters, what they're going on about is certainly fun. Yeah. So again, if you were worried about, look, this starts with a wedding, and before you're done, there's terminal illness and a funeral. It has everything, Tom.
Oh, great.
But here's what you'll enjoy. The disdain with which the Crawley family addresses the filmmakers and actors is hilarious. I think Maggie Smith, who's always had the best lines in the films and the show, says something like, "I'd rather earn my living down a mine." So
whoa.
Yeah, they're just like, actors are coming to, with their sticky fingers all over our silverware. It's hilarious. But yeah, so it's funny that some of the families to go down to the south of France to find out what's going on with this villa, and they're more than happy to, because all these artists are infecting.
Oh gosh,
a beautiful mansion. But overall, you want good actors. You got them. I mentioned Maggie Smith, Michelle Dockery, Hugh Bonneville, Penelope Wilton, Imelda Staunton, Jim Carter, Elizabeth McGovern, and new to the franchise in this particular film, you got Hugh Dancy, Laura Haddock, and Dominic West. As I mentioned, Maggie Smith is the MVP. She also says about the actors, would you like to be an actor? I'd rather eat pebbles. And I love that Elizabeth McGovern has this late career boost. I don't know if you remember her. She was in Ordinary People, Ragtime, Racing with the Moon, Once Upon a Time in America. She's having a baby. This great 80s beauty, cute, funny, good actress, and kind of never broke out again, never stopped working. But Downton Abbey was a breakout again, where suddenly she's in this thing that's sort of a sensation. And I was thrilled to see that for her. And of course, anytime you add Dominic West to your script, it's a benefit for your production. So he shows up in here as well. And wow. I suggest you see this on the big screen, because I think, you might have the chance to catch it on demand. And I know you're thinking, a big screen's just for big special effects things. But for my money, any movie that can be seen where it can overwhelm you is when the film can do its most magic. So the gorgeous Highclere Castle in England, where they shot the exteriors and interiors for the entire series and for both films, it just looks gorgeous. And once you are sort of soaked up in that entire world, then you can gather how they behave and become more involved in everything. So yeah, this is a good one to see on the big screen, even though it doesn't have explosions and dinosaurs.
No,
and aerial effects.
Right, but I would have expected that. But interestingly enough, what it lacks in explosions and dinosaurs, it more than it makes up for in costumes and background scenery and the lushness of it all. And I've got to imagine that on the big screen, that just really comes at you in an incredibly sensory way.
Yeah, it's something you didn't know you missed when you watched 52 episodes on TV.
Right.
That, this looks great on the big screen, lush and gorgeous. And, it only cost well, it's made $89 million to date, which is not the billion that Top Gun Maverick has made, but it
Right.
only cost half that.
Right.
And that's how you do it, folks. Just don't spend a ton of money. We're getting a Ghostbusters sequel to Afterlife because they spent $75 million. We didn't get a sequel to the 2016 one with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy because they spent $120 million. And so they both earn the same, but Ghostbusters Afterlife looks like a big hit in comparison. So spending not a ton and still having a look as gorgeous as Downton Abbey: A New Era does means we might get more of these.
Wow. And it's about as British as you can get when you look at the cast list. I mean, it's just
yeah. And the story and the dialogue and the costumes. It's British coming out of its pores. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's Downton Abbey, A New Era. And the second one we have to talk about has one of I think is becoming one of my most interesting actors. I enjoy watching everything that he does these days. And 1891 Fredonia Opera House attendees will have seen him in a prior movie last month, maybe, or about 6 weeks ago in the last cinema series. But I'll let you talk about that. We'll catch up in a minute. But it is The Phantom of the Open. And when I first saw the title, yes, I made the classic mistake. I thought it was The Phantom of the Opera. I thought somebody had done The Phantom of the Opera, and no, lo and behold, it's The Phantom of the Open, and they're talking about the British Open. And this movie features one of the most interesting characters I think I've ever read about.
Played by, and you're talking about Mark Rylance.
I am talking about Mark Rylance, yes.
Oscar winner, who kind of has worked a ton, but apparently when he won that Oscar, now everybody knows him and can't mistake him from Don't Look Up, from Ready Player One. He showed up in Dunkirk. Now he works a ton, and the movies are better for it.
So. And I think the last movie that the Opera House people saw was him as a tailor who was involved with some kind of Nazi scheme going on. I can't think of the title of it, but
The Outfit.
The Outfit. Thank you. That's the one that we just had that at the Opera House in the last series. So Mark Rylance is really on a roll, and he's good.
It has The Phantom of the Opera been shown at the Opera House? Boy, that would really make sense, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. It would, but not to my knowledge. We'll have to get that
every Halloween. I'm going to put it out there. Hopefully, someone's listening.
Okay.
Every Halloween, you should show The Phantom, the old school, Lon Chaney one, not anything, not the musical. But so The Phantom of the Open, bit different than The Phantom of the Opera. This is a story of the world's worst golfer to ever play in the British Open, perhaps to ever play in professional golf. His name is Maurice Flitcroft, and he's kind of fearing the end of his job as a crane operator. He's halted all his personal desires to raise this family. The early film, he's talking about what he's going to do, and then he meets this girl, and it's like the greatest thing ever, but she already has a kid, and he's like, I'm a father now. And then they grow up, and then he looks at his life and wonders what's going on in his mid-40s. So he just eventually becomes transfixed by golf, and one of the crazier cinematic moments of the film where he sees golf and his eyes wide open, he flies in the air and spins around the earth. It's a crazy sequence that really is unlike the rest of the movie, but you get the idea that he wants to play golf. So he files to enter the British Open and gets in by a fluke. He literally he's talking, his wife's filling it out for him. You're a professional? Oh yeah, of course I am. And so he puts and then they read the thing and they go, he's a professional? I wouldn't put it on there if he wasn't. Okay. And they let him in, and he's the worst, right? He's terrible, but man, is he fun to watch. And that's what happens with British TV audience as well. They love him, and he becomes a hit. So here's a movie that could make fun of this guy, right? But it's really a movie about following your dreams and the idea that it's never too late and that nothing can stop you, really. And that theme hits me right in the heart. Paralleling the story of his two twin sons who want to be professional disco dancers. Is that a career anyone should choose? Probably not. But, they show his dad's almost a reflection of, man, we should go for it too. And it shows just how better off the family is by really pursuing their dreams. My whole theme in life has been settling equals death. And I love that Morris went for it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to it is sometimes, well, let's take this to Western New York for just a second.
Sure.
Let's bring parallels to that, because last time I saw you was when I was dedicating a plaque for my late wife, Karen Volpe Preston, at the National Comedy Center in Jamestown. You can go see that plaque in the Memorial Garden. And it's a reminder how, if you're not careful, your world, for the dreams you want, your world can seem small. So that's why I created a scholarship in her name, to give people that nudge that, hey, if what you have isn't around you, open your worldview, get to where you can access the things you want to achieve your dreams. Don't just go, well, this is my lot in life, or, well, this is just all there is going to be for me. So Flitcroft would not, I'm going to use the double negative, but forgive me, he would not see himself not at the open. he just now, and he never has this like crazy, I'm going to do it. Da, da, da. He's very simple. It's almost a Peter Sellers type suddenly arrival at the British Open. Mm-hmm. But again, the film really wins because it also equally focuses on the family drama that surrounded Flitcroft. And it's not drama, but it's just, you know, the dynamics, and excavating more movie gold that way was better than if a comedy just goofed on him. So the golf scenes are hilarious, but they couple those scenes with the drama, that makes the film a lot richer. We talked about Rylance. He underplays everything. It seems to be one of his things.
Yes, it is actually. Yeah, he underplays everything. And he was given a lot of credit, in fact, for deciding to play this man's life straight up rather than make a caricature out of him.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And Sally Hawkins plays everything straight, and mm-hmm. she does no, charge to be funny in the movie. So they play off each other excellent. Sally Hawkins is great, from The Shape of Water or Happy Go Lucky or wherever you might know her from. She's fantastic. Next thing you know, here's me at the end of the movie crying. This goofy guy goes to the British Open. He shouldn't be there. He's terrible. But, because you think, where's the story going to go after he plays the British Open? Because he's not too long and he's in the Open. What more could you tell? There's a lot. So, and of course, his place in history and his effect on other people all plays out in the second half of the film. And he's golf history now, whether he deserved it or not. But he just would not be stopped. And throughout it all, British charm just overflows. It's a good British double feature, because you got you got the high end Downton Abbey folks, and then you got the working class, and you'll cover it all. But I like to use the word folksy with a lot of these type of movies. It's very folk, like Waking Ned Devine or The Full Monty or Calendar Girls, all these sort of British folksy stories that just sort of play out, simple yet charming stories. Even the score is simple and quaint when it has to be, punctuates emotion when necessary, doesn't play a huge John Williams type theme. The whole thing just kind of relaxes into a nice, easy to digest pace.
That's great. It's really good to hear that, because I do, I mean, it's a movie that I think I want to see, just simply because I love watching Mark Rylance's performances. I saw him as a stage actor on the Globe in London. That's where he made his reputation for early on in his career, and he was a tremendous stage actor. And I think, if anybody wants to correct me when they hear this, they certainly are welcome to. But I think he was for a while the artistic director of the Globe Theater, but has gone on now to become, a really recognized film star. And you and I were talking about the movie Don't Look Up, and he is in that movie, and he's extraordinary. The way he creates that. The character that he creates in that movie it would take a while to describe it, but you'd have to put it in context of the movie. But it is a magnificent performance. I think he's worth watching.
Yeah, in that film as well, he could have overplayed that. He could have been the crazy tech genius, but instead he's almost childlike in a way he makes these decisions that affect the entire world.
Right.
and here here is very simple, childlike suggestions and decisions just annoy the hell out of the guys who run the Open. Rhys Ifans, if you know him, he's from Notting Hill and from the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. He has a lot of fun just boiling every time Flitcroft shows up again, to do anything. So wow. And here's another one to see with a crowd. You might think, this is a small movie, I'll watch it at home. But the crowd, first of all, thanks for pointing this movie out to me. Even in LA, it was hard to find, but I found it over in Encino in a movie theater and in the afternoon, and there were about 25 people there, which is enough to enjoy it as a crowd. Because the guy behind me and we were laughing like idiots, and that just felt good. I mentioned Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, earlier, and that movie was the first time in 2 years where I got to enjoy the real experience of a movie with people. Every cameo, the place went nuts, like, "Wah!" And then I saw Jackass Forever, and I haven't laughed that hard with a bunch of people in 2 years. And now Top Gun Maverick, just I haven't had that summer movie experience with people in so long. So the laughs you'll have with people in this, right down to the final, the on-screen text about where they are now, has laughs in it too. So, if it's coming to Fredonia, go out and see it, because again, it was hard to find here. If they're just going to play it in Fredonia, I suggest going down to check it out.
All right. Well, I'm sure that we can get some people to do that, and they really should, just for everything the both of us have talked about. So before you go, you watched a Top Gun in the summer movie season. I'm going to ask you to just give us a little brief, sort of overview of what you think is coming up in the summer movie season that people should check out.
Oh, what's coming up in the summer movie season?
Yeah, anything other than Top Gun?
Well, we've talked about how much I love Marvel. I think, have we gone up? Should I go on more about how much?
Well, we both love Marvel, but that's okay. Yeah,
I know. Beforehand, we were actually talking about Doctor Strange and a good conversation about movies with you, Tom. That was exciting.
Yes, it was.
And I think they'll overachieve again with Thor: Love and Thunder. Taika Waititi is back, who directed Thor Ragnarok and since then won an Oscar for Jojo Rabbit, and he's gonna bring together Christian Bale, Russell Crowe. Again, the casting in Marvel is always just like, an embarrassment of riches. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun when we return to Thor again. Now that, again, Marvel didn't know what to do with him. Kind of the Shakespearean take on him and the gods and everything was like, people liked it, but once they got funny with him, I think they knew they had to switch it up. Again, they're just always paying attention. They always do the right thing, switching it up, making Thor super funny. I think people loved that, and you'll get more of that with Thor: Love and Thunder. Bullet Train is coming out at the end of next month, or actually beginning of August. That's Brad Pitt's new film, and ever since Ocean's 11 came out in 2001, I've said you have to see everything Matt Damon, George Clooney, and Brad Pitt do.
I agree.
Big-time movie stars that never make simple choices. They could ride their looks through the end of that bad period that McConaughey had before he realized he was in it and had to like change it up and do Dallas Buyers Club and interesting stuff again.
Right.
These guys have been doing the interesting stuff for 20 years. So check out Bullet Train. It's from David Leitch, a big time, the name in action movies right now, between John Wick and Atomic Blonde and I think he did Deadpool 2, so it'll be fun and interesting. The Fabelmans will be up before the year is over. That's Spielberg's new movie, and based on West Side Story not even having, it shouldn't have even been made, and the fact that it was made and was good and received Oscar nominations was an incredible achievement for a guy in his mid-70s. And now The Fabelmans, I think, is going to be another personal story. This guy's just going to do stuff he wants to do for the rest of his career, which means it might be some of the best that he puts out. And then we've got the sequel to Avatar, which, if you haven't been to the theater by then, that should do it. Because James Cameron, sleep on him at your own peril. I think if you're like, Avatar, it's been 13 years. Well, see it and then get back to me, because that guy just constantly brings innovation.
Wonderful. Well, Paul Preston, SUNY Fredonia graduate and the movie guy of the movie guys. Once again, I really want to thank you for coming on. I always appreciate talking to you. It's always a lot of fun. And when we come back in August, September, whatever, we'll probably have some more movies to talk about. So I'll be catching up with you for sure.
Yes, and we're celebrating the 30th anniversary, Tom, of you and I going to see Unforgiven together.
Oh, my God.
Now, it was tough to get you to a movie because you're such a stage guy, and it's not actors or whatever in a movie. They're part of a machine. And I remember sitting next to you, and someone was talking about, the young kid in the movie was talking about the bad guys got it coming. And you said, we all got it coming, kid. And then Clint Eastwood said, we all got it coming, kid. And I went, Tom, he's like, I saw that. Like, he was just so thrilled that you were steps ahead of this dumb movie that won Best Picture. And and so the fact that we're talking about movies at all is exciting. They can still make converts when it's done well out of anybody. So
I'm almost very close to becoming a convert because I've seen a lot of interesting movies lately, and more and more it's like, maybe in my old age I ought to think about turning that around a bit.
Well, the British film scene is always one you can count on, and as far as the big blockbusters go, just look for the good directors. To your point.
So we've got it good with Downton Abbey and The Phantom of the Open. Thanks again, Paul. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Yep.
Screenings for all the movies in the cinema series take place on Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. and again the following Tuesday, also at 7:30. Downton Abbey: A New Era will screen on Saturday, July 9th, and again on Tuesday, July 12th. Phantom of the Open will be showing on Saturday, July 16th, and again on Tuesday, July 19th. Brian and Charles, about a lonely inventor in rural Wales who invents an odd robot to keep him company, will screen on Saturday, July 23rd, and again on Tuesday, July 26th. Finally, Elvis, a biopic about the life of Elvis Presley, directed by Baz Luhrmann and starring Tom Hanks as Elvis's manager, Colonel Parker, will play on Saturday, July 30th, and again on Tuesday, August 2nd. All show times are at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available only at the door and are $7 general admission, $6.50 for Opera House members and seniors, and $5 for students and children. And that's it for this Independence edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat. My thanks to Distinguished Professor Emeritus Alberto Rey and Mr. Paul Preston of the Movie Guys for being my guests on this episode. Notes from the Aisle Seat is a production of the 1891 Fredonia Opera House in Fredonia, New York. For more information on any of the Opera House's events, call the box office at 716-679-1891, visit the website at www.fredopera.org, or email us at operahouse@fredopera.org. Notes from the Aisle Seat is available wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and also on the Opera House YouTube channel. If you like this podcast, please consider following us by clicking the follow button on our website at aisleseat.podbean.com and spreading the word through your social media feeds. If you have an arts event that you'd like featured on the podcast, why don't you drop us a line at operahouse@fredopera.org, and we'll see about featuring your event. Please try to give us a month's advance notice if possible to facilitate timely scheduling. This concludes Season 1 of Notes from the Aisle Seat, which will be taking a summer break. We hope you've enjoyed the podcast so far, and we look forward to returning in the fall. All 21 episodes will be online at aisleseat.podbean.com should you wish to listen again to your favorite episodes. Season 2 will return with its first episode on August 31st, 2022. If you have any suggestions, comments, or criticisms of the podcast, just drop us a line at operahouse@fredopera.org. We'll be glad to receive your feedback. I'm Tom Laughlin, and until then, be safe out there and be kind to one another.